What's he doing? I will call Tim Lawton to move the motion. I'll then call the Minister to respond. There will not be an opportunity for the member in charge to wind up, as is the convention for 30-minute debates. Order, order. Tim Lawton to move the motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Elliott, and I beg to move that this House has considered baby loss and the role of coroners. I'm afraid you've got a double dose of me this afternoon, Mr. Elliott, which is obviously far too much for the public gallery, which has made a surge for the exits. However, this short debate is going to concentrate on my Civil Partnerships, Marriages and Deaths Registration, etc. Act 2019, which has been going for quite a while now and remains unfulfilled in one part, which is the purpose of the debate this afternoon. My Act started in the private members' ballot in the autumn of 2017. It had its second reading on the 2nd of February 2018. It passed all its parliamentary stages in February of 2019 and passed into law in May of 2019, almost 5 years ago. There were 4 parts to this quite ambitious private members' bill, historically ambitious and complicated. The first part was that the names and details of mothers should appear on marriage certificates, now an electronic record. That came into being in May 2021, since when I've received many grateful thanks from mothers or the husbands of late mothers whose names could be then recorded on marriage records. The second part was the extension of civil partnerships to opposite-sex couples, which came in on the 31st of December 2019 and became a regulation which was passed on the last day of Parliament before the election in 2019, since when over 25,000 happy couples have availed themselves of that facility. The third part was for the Secretary of State to produce a report on the registration of pregnancy loss, and there was a pregnancy loss committee set up, which I sat on. And last March, or rather this March, within the last couple of weeks, baby loss certificates have become a thing, and again have gone down very well. But part 4 of my Act... Oh, so early, of course. How can I resist?
Honourable gentleman, sorry, and the 4 parts that he's bringing forward, and particularly the pregnancy loss one. I know it's something that we've all, probably as families, have come to some terms with difficulty, but it's always a difficult topic to discuss, but the honourable gentleman is right to bring it forward. And for those who have lost babies during pregnancy, I think their loss is something that we all feel. We can feel for them. As families, we feel for our partners, for our wives, for our mothers, for our sisters, and those who have lost as well. So I commend the right honourable gentleman and what he's done in bringing this forward.
Tim Lawton,
who takes a great interest in these matters. And this piece of legislation, I'm very proud of, has sought to try and make a very painful situation for many parents who've lost babies that much more bearable, in as much as it can be. So I hope that there are parents who've benefited from this, but there are still parents waiting to benefit from this, because Part 4 has yet to become a reality. And that was the section of my Act which gave a one-line amendment to the Coroner and Justice Act of 2009, which would empower coroners, if they saw fit, to be able to investigate stillbirths in certain cases. It just required the Secretary of State to make preparations of reports into this and how they might be brought forward. And yet we haven't got a report. All we've got is just a factual account of the consultation, a consultation which opened on the 26th of March 2019, closed on the 18th of June 2019, but which only actually reported its results after years of nagging from me on December the 6th, 2003, barely 3 months ago. It took 4.5 years for the government actually just to publish the results of that consultation. It's quite extraordinary. I was given excuses all the way through. I've had meetings with ministers. The problem partly is because it's a joint responsibility between the Department for Justice, and I feel sorry for my honourable colleagues being brought here today, not the normal minister, but I know he'll give me some helpful information at the end of this, and it's responsibility of the Department for Health as well, which is part of the problem. But this is an issue which got overwhelming support across Parliament. It's an issue which got overwhelming support in reports from both the Justice Select Committee and the Health Select Committee. The last one went under the chairmanship of the now Chancellor, who was very supportive. So why is it taking so long still? Well, we were given excuses by the Health Minister before, that it was delayed because of coronavirus, then it was delayed because of changes of ministers. Well, all that's happened. We've had some consistency amongst ministers in these cases, and we're well past COVID, thank goodness, Ms Elliott. So why is this still a problem that needs to be addressed, and why on earth is the government taking so long? Well, it's a problem, Ms Elliott, because there are still 13 babies stillborn or who die shortly after birth every day. The government's done much to reduce safety in maternity departments. But it is still a problem, and we still have a relatively high level of stillbirths amongst other European countries, even though the level has come down by 19.3% since 2010. But it remains a big problem and a source of great grief from parents who go through the trauma of having carried a child, in some cases to term, only for that child to be born dead. If I just briefly revisit the reasons my bill, this part of my bill was necessary, in my speech back in those heady days when it was first proposed back in 2018, and I said, and I was very hopeful at that stage, I know we're pushing at an open door with my last measure, as the Health Secretary signalled his support for it at the dispatch box during a statement on stillbirths. There appears to be an anomaly in the law where coroners in England have no power to investigate any unexplained deaths of any humans unless they are stillbirths. That is because a baby who dies during delivery is not legally considered to have lived, and if a baby has not lived, it has not died, as coroners can only investigate deaths where there is a body of the deceased person. However, 1 in 3 stillbirths occur in healthy babies who die at term, and in some cases these deaths occur due to mismanaged deliveries, and there have been a number of high-profile cases involving clusters of such deaths well above the national average. That was the reason that I was urged by my own coroner, Penny Schofield in West Sussex, by the Coroners Association, coroners around the country, as well as many birth-orientated charities, to bring in this measure. Of course, those reasons, if anything, have got even stronger, because we've had a series of scandals in maternity departments over the last few years. The Nottingham inquiry by the Ockenden Nottingham Maternity Review, where 1,266 families contacted the review teams directly with the concerns about deaths of their children. Then we had the scandal around the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital, with deaths of more than 200 babies and 9 mothers were investigated. The East Kent Hospitals University Trust review, and the Morecambe Bay review some years ago as well, into the unnecessary deaths of 11 babies and 1 mother. And only this week, Ms Elliott, we had the report in the press that 1 in 7 maternity units has closed in the past decade, sparking warnings of a mounting crisis in healthcare for women. And estimates suggest there's a shortage of midwives across England. So this issue is as live and as important as ever to get right. And what we need, absolutely, is trusted independent scrutiny of why certain stillbirths have taken place. So if I look at what the government did produce in its response, well, it hasn't produced its response, I correct myself, in its factual report in publishing the results of the consultation back in December. The Ministerial Forward says, we are working to improve the information available to families regarding the investigative processes that may take place following a stillbirth. Hear, hear. It's essential that we get this right, given the emotional impact that losing a baby has on parents and others involved. Absolutely right. And respondents both supported and were against proposals that coroners should have a role in stillbirth investigations. But that ignores the fact they overwhelmingly supported it, and I'll quote the figures shortly. So they gave a factual summary of the consultation and promised further information and government action later, with no timescale, which is what I really would like the Minister to address. But then also, the way this report was skewed seemed to dwell too much on reasons for why a change in the law wasn't actually necessary. They gave excuses that the mandatory nature of the investigations could be distressing and intrusive. Well, we're only looking for the coroner to be able to have the power to pick up a small number of cases, not every stillbirth that happens, but those where there are serious questions to be asked. That the loss of parental control over whether a post-mortem examination would take place, well, it's important that the coroner should make the final decision whether to investigate, because there are suspicions around some stillbirths may be caused by domestic violence by partners involved, which has led to a stillbirth, and they would want to effectively hush it up. There's the potential for duplication, the impact on resources for coroners and local authorities. Well, this shouldn't be a cost-based measure, Mrs. Elliott. And that there would be a significant increase in demand on paediatric pathology. But again, no figures are given for how many stillbirths are actually going to be investigated. We're talking about dozens, not hundreds or thousands. And extraordinary excuses such as coroners are not best placed to identify and disseminate clinical learning. Well, they investigate an awful lot of adult deaths and are able to disseminate and identify clinical learning as well. So why should the same not apply to babies? They seem to be talking down the ability and efficacy of coroners, which is slightly worrying. So, Mrs. Elliott, back in 2017, the government announced its intention, after I published my bill, to consider whether and how coroners would carry out investigations, and that it would be at a 37 weeks gestation and over. I agree with that. I think it should apply to a full term. And then they produce their consultation. Well, if I can skip to the results from the consultation, and just some quotes that were supportive in this report. A bereaved family member said, "I feel it's important for parents to feel completely confident that the investigation is run by someone completely unbiased and impartial, especially when there is concern that there may have been substandard care." I agree. And that person is the coroner, by anybody's imagination. They also gave excuses in this report that coroners were not best placed to make these determinations and would need to rely on medical professionals. Well, again, why is it any different from the coroner's role in investigating adult deaths over which there are question marks? So the result of this consultation was pretty definitive, I have to say, Ms. Elliott. If I get to the actual figures. The number of people who responded to the consultation were 322. Of those, 244, 75.8% replied in the affirmative to "Do you think coroners should have a role in investigating stillbirths?" So by a factor of 3 to 1, people think that this is a good measure. To the question, "Do you agree with the proposal about ascertaining how it was that the baby was not born alive?" the figure was 86.7% that coroners have a role to play and that there are questions that need to be asked. In answer to the question, "Do you agree that as part of the findings, coroners should identify learning points and issue recommendations to the persons and bodies they consider relevant?" 85.8% of people responded. The fourth one I'd highlight: "Do you agree that no consent or permission from the bereaved parents or anyone else should be required for a coronial investigation?" That's a more contentious issue, but still 63.9%, almost two-thirds, said that they should be mandatory, even if the parents didn't agree. And that's important for the reasons I've just given. And the final consultation question I'd flag up is, "Do you agree with the proposal to investigate only term and full-term stillbirths?" To which the response was 70.6% no. So people were saying, actually, they think the scope of coroners being able to investigate stillbirths should be even wider and earlier than was being proposed. So by any measure, Mrs. Elliott, This was a consultation that overwhelmingly backed the measures in my bill and backed the changes which have been supported so widely in this House, in the coroner's field and in the medical field by many people as well. So finally, my question to the Minister is, how much longer do we have to wait? I've been in this place for quite a long time, Mrs. Elliott, and I have never seen such a wide gap between legislation coming in, requiring consultation, for then it to be published, let alone for the government to decide what it's going to act on. In the letter to me accompanying the consultation publication, the Honourable Member for, my friend, the Honourable Member for Lewis, the Minister, said, officials are also exploring mechanisms for improving existing processes to further address the aims of the coroner's proposal. A further statement will be issued in due course. That chilling phrase, in due course, Ms. Elliott, that we so often hear from ministers who have not got a handle on when they're actually going to do something which they actually know needs to be done. So my questions to the poor minister who's been dragged here today, for whom I have every sympathy, is please can we get on with this? There is no excuse for not doing that. All the consultation has taken place. Everyone has said, yep, this is actually a pretty good idea, just as it had absolutely overwhelming and unanimous support from both Houses of Parliament when the legislation went through all those years ago. Can we please now have a clear timetable for the government's formal response? Hopefully that response will be, yes, we agree, we're now going to get on with it, by when it's going to come in. And if that's not the case, I think we are owed urgently, with a lot of people interested in this, an explanation why this should not go forward in the way that's been suggested, given that the government's own consultation has shown such overwhelming support for it.
The question is that this House has considered baby loss and the role of coroners. Minister.
Well, thank you, Ms Elliott. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I would like to start by thanking my honourable friend, the member for East Worthing and Shoreham, for securing this debate. And in doing so, I pay tribute to his work in shining a light on this important but complex and extremely sensitive issue of stillbirth, which, despite the experience and incredible dedication of our medical professionals, continues to touch the lives of too many of our families. Now, bereavement is never easy, but to lose a child through stillbirth is a tragedy. The government is committed to supporting parents through such a difficult experience and ensuring that they have access to the support that they need. But more than that, one of our highest priorities is to reduce the number of stillbirths and other adverse maternity outcomes. And to help achieve this, we are committed to ensuring that wherever possible, lessons are learned and care is improved to prevent avoidable stillbirths in the future. To put that aim into context, the government set the national maternity safety ambition to halve the 2010 rates of stillbirths, neonatal and maternity deaths, and brain injuries occurring during or soon after birth by 2025. And also by 2025, we want to reduce the preterm birth rate from 8% to 6%. We're making good progress, but recognise that more still needs to be done to achieve that ambition. Since 2010, the stillbirth rate has reduced by 23%, and the neonatal maternity rate of babies born after 24 weeks gestation has reduced by 30%. But although we can demonstrate clear progress, it's vital that we continue to learn from the tragedy of every stillbirth. Concerns about the consistency and independence of those investigations have given rise to the calls for a more transparent and independent process, for which my honourable friend continues to advocate so consistently. The coroner, as an independent judge, investigates deaths for which, amongst other things, the cause is unknown. So it's easy to understand the proposal that their role should be extended to include the investigation of stillbirths. But let me pause here for a moment to emphasise a very important point. At present, coroners do not have jurisdiction to investigate a stillbirth because, sadly, as my honourable friend said in his speech, where there has not been an independent life, there has not legally been a death. However, a child born who is showing signs of life has had an independent life, and so that child's death must be investigated if the coroner's jurisdiction is engaged. And when there is doubt about whether a child was born alive, that is a matter for the coroner to determine. And it is open to anyone, including the bereaved family, to report a case to the coroner if they believe there is need for such an investigation. In 2016, the government committed to consult on whether, and if so how, the coronial investigation of stillbirths should be introduced. and the commitment was made as part of a refreshed maternity safety strategy. Since then, a range of important safety initiatives have been rolled out, including the Perinatal Mortality Review Tool, which is now available in every maternity service in the UK. The tool enables trusts to review all stillbirths and neonatal deaths by setting out a set of questions and principles to guide trusts through a standardised review process. The tool's secondary aim is to ensure local and national learning to improve care and ultimately prevent future baby deaths. Collation and analysis of the data from the tool and the production of annual national reports on the key themes arising from the reviews and recommendations intended to improve the safe maternity care and safe outcomes for babies. In addition, the Maternity and Newborn Safety Investigations Programme, established in 2018 and now hosted independently by the Care Quality Commission, provides independent, standardised and family-focused investigations for families, which also provide learning to the health system. Alongside these initiatives, the consultation on coronial investigation was taken forward in 2019, again as my honourable friend has said. We are extremely grateful to everyone who submitted one of the 334 responses to the consultation document, to the 63 people who attended stakeholder workshops, and in particular to those respondents who shared their personal experience of the pain of stillbirth. The findings of the consultation were complex, as my honourable friend has said. The majority of respondents were supportive of the proposal for coroners to have a role in investigating stillbirths, but many of them did not agree with the proposals on how this should be implemented. Some were concerned that bereaved parents would not be able to withhold consent to the investigation or any associated post-mortem examination, that the investigation could be distressing and intrusive, that the length of the investigation could delay closure for the bereaved family, and that the process may not fulfil the parents' expectation of finding answers, and that they could feel like they were being blamed. There were also significant policy and practical concerns. First, the potential for duplication, friction and confusion between investigations by the coroner, the Maternity and Newborn Safety Investigations Programme and the Trust or Health Board, and the potential impact on that of clinicians' behaviour, and a concern that the safety initiatives introduced in 2018 would achieve the same policy objectives as coronial investigation in any event. Yes.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and I understand the points he's making. But in terms of distress that it may cause to parents and blame and everything like that, I appreciate those points. But there is no difference to that potential distress as to whether the child was stillborn or whether the child lived for a couple of minutes. But in the latter case, the coroner would have the power to investigate and could cause the same level of distress and everything to the parents as if the child had been stillborn. Why is there that distinction?
I thank my honourable friend for his point, and the point that I'm making is I'm reflecting the points that were made in the consultation. His point is well landed, and officials and my honourable friend will have noted the case that he has just made. In addition, Ms Elliott, there were concerns about the resource impact for the NHS and the locally funded coroner services, and crucially, there would be a significant increase in demand on an already stretched paediatric pathology services, with a significant lead in time to train the new resource, although I do note the comments that my honourable friend made in his speech. In any event, some felt that coroners would not be best placed to identify and disseminate clinical learning points at a regional and national level. So although many acknowledged that coroners could deliver investigations into stillbirths, there was no consensus on precisely how they would do so, and some strong opposition to the specific proposals that we put forward. Given the importance and the sensitivity of this issue, it's imperative that we get the response right. Now that means carefully considering all of the issues which the consultation identified and working through the complex questions that they raise. Work to publish a response was paused during the pandemic, again as my honourable friend has said, and as I've already explained, the landscape of maternity investigations has now changed significantly. So one of the key questions that we are now considering is whether the maternity safety initiatives that are in place are already achieving or have the potential to achieve the overarching objective without the need for coroner investigations. While the government was developing and publishing its consultation proposals, Parliament passed the Civil Partnerships, Marriages and Deaths Registration Act 2019, which was, of course, introduced by my honourable friend. As he has explained, Section 4 of this Act places a duty on the Secretary of State to make arrangements for the preparation and publication of a report on whether, and if so how, coroners could investigate stillbirths. The Act also provides a power for the Lord Chancellor to make provision for coronial stillbirth investigations through secondary legislation if, following the publication of the report, that is considered to be appropriate. And getting those provisions onto the statute book is a testament to my honourable friend's commitment to the issue. And I can, of course, understand his frustration, which he has eloquently expressed today and on other occasions, that it has not yet been resolved. But as I've said, we have to get this right. And to that end, in December of last year, the Ministry of Justice and the Department of Health and Social Care jointly published a factual summary of the responses to the 2019 consultation. I've set out the key findings here this afternoon, and the two departments are continuing to work through their complex implications. As an immediate next step, my honourable friends, the member for Finchley and Golders Green, who has joined us, on behalf of the Ministry of Justice, and my honourable friend, the member for Lewis, on behalf of the Department of Health and Social Care, have told me that they would, of course, be happy to meet with my honourable friend, the member for Worthing, to share the latest thinking and discuss possible ways forward on the outstanding issues. And I can confirm that by the summer recess, we'll make a further statement that sets out the government's position on this policy. So I would like to conclude that by reiterating my thanks to my honourable friend for the opportunity to respond to this important debate, and to all others in attendance today, and to all those who have made some very valuable contributions to this issue along the way.
The question is that this House has considered baby loss and the role of coroners. As many of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order. We have to wait for Do we have to wait till Thursday?
Go early, or you can suspend until after.
And until 4:30.